Look at this deck spindle. How the heck did I do that? And how am I going to fix it? So my problems began a couple of weeks ago when I was mowing my lawn, and every time I turned on the blades, the deck was vibrating oddly. Not only that, the cut I was getting on the grass was really uneven. And my lawn tractor felt a little weird the previous week, but now it was clear something was really wrong. Then it went from bad to worse when this started to happen. Ouch, just look at those gouges in my lawn. It was time to figure out what was wrong. So I pulled the tractor into the garage, and then I pulled the deck off and moved my tractor out of the way. Upon closer inspection, it became clear that the blade on one side was moving all over the place, and so was the whole spindle assembly on the top of the deck. When I looked under the pulley, I saw the sheared and twisted wreck of what was once a perfectly good spindle. Clearly it was shot and I was going to need a new one, but how the heck did I manage to do this? Well, here's how I think the problem with my tractor came to be. I believe it all started with a mouse named Martha. No, the mouse didn't chew through the metal. Let me explain. My daughter had a pet mouse named Martha, and last winter, Martha died. And of course, there were funeral services, and we buried Martha in the backyard, complete with a headstone. So fast forward to spring, when I foolishly ran over Martha's grave and I felt the impact. My tractor definitely came in contact with that big rock of a headstone. Now the problem wasn't immediately noticeable, and I thought I got lucky. However, fast forward a few more weeks, and that's when my problems really became obvious. That run-in with Martha's headstone is what I believe started the spindle's downward spiral, and how we got this awful looking display of twisted metal. So now I've got to fix it, and after doing some research, it seems replacing a spindle is a similar process on most Deere consumer grade decks, from the 100 series to the 200s all the way to the 300s. So I started by removing the blade, and with the blade out of the way, I put the deck on the ground so that I could access the bolts that attach it from the top of the deck. So before you can access the bolts that attach it to the deck, you have to remove a pulley. Once I figured out the socket size for that pulley bolt, I grabbed my impact wrench, and that worked like a charm. Once the pulley was off, I found the 4 bolts that attach the spindle to the deck, and the impact wrench made quick work of those as well. Now everything was going very smoothly, so I lifted the deck up. Whoops, I should have put those pieces somewhere else. Anyway, once I lifted the deck up, the spindle was left behind on the ground. So I threw the busted spindle into my trunk and headed to my local Deere dealer, where when I arrived there was some confusion about which spindle I needed, and I have an S240, and apparently there are multiple deck variations even in the same size mower deck and tractor model. So if you need parts, always have the dealer look up your part number by the serial number of your tractor. Good thing I brought my broken spindle with me, as I nearly came home with a different 42-inch deck spindle than what I actually needed. So I arrived back with $65 less in my wallet, but with a new spindle. And to put it in, I just slid in the new spindle into place and then lined up the bolts with the holes. Then I threaded the nuts on by hand and used the impact wrench to tighten just until snug. I asked the dealer for the torque specs, but they said they had none. I looked online too, but no info. I did find other tractors suggesting 20 foot-pounds, so I torqued it to that. And then I put on the pulley and hand-threaded the bolt on some of the way. Once started, I simply snugged up that bolt with my impact wrench, and then I tried to torque that to 50-ish foot-pounds that I saw recommended for other lawn tractor deck spindle pulley bolts. But it didn't work all that well. I probably could have found a way to torque it, but instead, I just used an impact wrench and judged it by feel. Once assembled, everything felt good and snug. And then I reattached the blade, and I always like to put some blue thread locker on the nut that holds the blade in place. And I hand threaded the bolt until the threads lined up, and I snugged that up with my impact wrench. Once snug, I torqued that blade bolt to spec, and after I was done reattaching the blade, I gave it a spin, and it looks like we're back in business. So while the deck was off, I washed it, and I greased the new and old spindles, which I probably should have done before I washed it, and then I put the deck back on the mower and tried it out, and it seemed to work good. About a week later, I mowed the lawn, and I'm happy to report that my Deere is working great now. There is one thing, though, that is bothering me. My wife and daughter, they say that I'm not allowed to move the mouse headstone. In memory of Martha, the mouse that could never stop eating.